Alright, so welcome to the latest episode of someone with no qualifications reviews something they know basically nothing about. So, I'm a Lamborghini owner and I'm reviewing a van, which tells you pretty much all you need to know about the quality of this review. I.e., I'm going to be grasping at straws to come up with things to say, but I'll do my best to not waffle on ad nauseum for the purpose of this video. Alright, so basically I'm in a van. It's usefully practical. I'm using it to transport stuff because I don't have a practical car, and I found it to be adequate as far as vans go, but everything is super cheap and the technology is terrible, and I would never actually want to drive these on a daily basis. That's pretty much my thoughts. In any case, if you have any thoughts about these vans, drop them in the comments below. Otherwise, it would be brilliant if you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Alright, so in the background to this van, I'm getting this van from GoGet because I need to transport some stuff for my brother. That's pretty much the backstory. I've driven the van once or twice before, and I've kind of gotten familiar with its negatives, of which there are many, and the positives, of which there's really two, that it's going to be pretty much impervious and basically it will survive like a cockroach, and it fits a lot of stuff in it, which is probably the main purpose of a van. And if you're running a commercial outfit, those are really the things you need to know. The main negatives, of course, are that everything is cheap. I really don't want to think about what's actually been on these chairs, and everything feels kind of flimsy and and the infotainment system sucks, the technology sucks, everything is manual, and I really wouldn't want to drive those. So that's basically my overview of it. However, I'll leap into some more specifics about individual aspects of this van to give you a little bit more insight into the individual things such as performance, such as it is, practicality, comfort, which is non-existent, technology, which is barely better than comfort, and basically my general thoughts about the car. However, like I said, if you have any views about it, drop those in the comments below, because obviously I really probably don't know what I'm talking about, and you probably know much more than me. So, performance. Well, kind of non-existent is probably the best way of putting it. Now, that's probably a bit unfair. It does actually do decently well in city traffic. The area where it struggles is basically when you need to go fast, or if you need to go up hills, or if you're carrying a heavy load, and in particular if you need to go fast carrying a heavy load up a hill. That's pretty much where it struggles. And that means that in places like Sydney it's not going to be brilliant. The other area it struggles, unless you really upgrade it, is going to be potholes. And everything rattles and you can feel all of the bumps, and I really would not want to take this over potholes or the like. So that's pretty much where it struggles. Now in terms of performance more specifically, well, I'm currently going up a hill. It feels laborious, and that's pretty much all you need to know about it. It struggles performing. The main thing you might actually be interested in more reasonably in terms of performance is going to come down to actually maneuverability and its ability to actually steer around things and how big it actually feels on the road. That's where you really are actually going to be interested in performance, let's face it, because no one's going to be racing a van. So in terms of performance, the handling is actually quite decent. I was pleasantly surprised about how maneuverable this is. Like, I really don't feel the weight of this car. Now, in part, that could be due to the driving position, i.e. I'm quite high. It also could be because the car's kind of throwing me around with some body roll, which maybe makes it feel a little bit more sporty than it is, i.e. if there's body roll, it must be doing something. So that could be possibly what's driving it. The main downside when we're looking at handling here is really going to come down to sometimes there's a bit of parallax error when using the side mirrors. You would get used to that, but without driving it a lot, it does feel a little bit off. Basically, you kind of get the angles. It feels weird, to be honest, the angling that it's at and how it magnifies things. The other thing that's more significant is the reverse camera, at least is in this car, is terrible. I mean, absolutely awful. Like, for a car of this size, you would want a decent reverse camera, and preferably cameras all around it. However, it doesn't have those. Now, the cameras all around, that's more of a luxury car thing that's happened recently. I'm not really that pedantic about it. But a reverse camera is actually really useful regardless of which car you own. And this car's reverse camera is in the rear vision mirror, which is actually annoying. I'd probably just go down to a local audio place, get an upgraded rear vision mirror, and be done with it. The plus side that offsets this is unless you have a lot of things in the back, it actually has really good visibility out the back of the car, which you would expect given the sheer size of the window at the back, so you can see quite well what is going on. The other thing visibility-wise that is great is the front is very short, which is kind of what you would expect with a van, but it gives you a good idea of how much car is in front of you, and this helps you to place the car in the road. So it feels much easier to maneuver around than the size would suggest you would feel. Now, notwithstanding the fact that it is reasonably maneuverable, it has a couple of key issues. Now, the size is definitely one of them, in that it is a large vehicle, so as a result, it is actually difficult to get in and out of parking spaces simply by virtue of its size. The next thing is that, again, partly related to that size, it has major traction issues, in that it will struggle with traction when going up hills, and especially when you're reversing up hills. So you probably don't want to do too much of that. It is unnerving when parking as well. The other thing related to this is also related to the terrible reverse camera. You can't really see what is behind you very well, so the spatial awareness you have is almost non-existent. So actually telling whether you'll hit something can be really quite tricky, and it takes quite a bit of getting used to that. And when you couple the size with the terrible reverse camera with the fact that it kind of loses traction, it can be annoying to park in and around places. Alright, so what about the technology? Well, the technology is not brilliant, and that's in a few ways. Basically, get forward to shifting everything manually, nothing is really automated very well, and it all feels like it's kind of put together in the cheapest possible way. The infotainment system does not do much either. Now, it has the bare minimum of a map, by which I mean it's low resolution, it's not going to be particularly up to date, and you'd be better off just using Google Maps. The issue, of course, is it doesn't have Android Auto, which basically means that for you to use Google Maps, you would need to set up your phone separately, so you need to bear that one in mind. It does supposedly have Bluetooth connectivity. Now, in terms of things like the gauge cluster, if you're used to modern gauge clusters where there's kind of screens everywhere and gimmicks and the like, then be prepared to go back in time. Now, the interior is, again, kind of what you would expect from a commercial transit van. It isn't really rugged, but nor is it particularly nice, which means you kind of get the worst of all worlds. So by not particularly nice, I mean everything is plasticky and everything feels annoying. And I kind of don't like the gear lever, but that could just be because I'm used to a car, but it kind of feels flimsy as well, which, to be totally honest, is symptomatic of a lot of Toyota cars. They feel kind of flimsy in terms of the gear lever. In terms of the plastic everywhere else, it's basically plastic on the steering wheel, plastic on the dashboard, plastic on the doors, plastic everywhere. The seats are made of cloth, which is probably not going to come as a huge surprise for a commercial car, but still it isn't particularly nice. So if you're looking for a car that is pleasant to spend a long time in if you're personally driving it, this is probably not going to achieve that. So basically, it's comfortable enough, but it's not brilliant. The other downside is it doesn't even really feel as if everything is particularly rugged. The plastics feel like they're typical Toyota plastics, which is not nice, but not necessarily hard wearing. The floor has kind of this pseudo-rubberized feel to it, but it doesn't look like it's anything other than just kind of a cheap plasticking coating that you could kind of do yourself. It doesn't feel like it is a rugged SUV type covering that is going to be great with work boots. Rather, it's the bare minimum that you would use in order to cover up mess, basically. One of the major selling points with the HiAce is exactly how much storage space it has. Now, you've got two major variants here, the long wheelbase and the super long wheelbase. With a long wheelbase, you get 6,000 liters of boot or storage space, and this is essentially a gigantic rectangle that you have in the back of the van. So your load length is around 2.9 meters, width around 1.5, and height around 1.3 meters. Now obviously you'll want to err on the side of caution, just due to things getting snagged, however there's quite a bit of storage space here. Now the super long wheelbase actually adds to this a bit. Now, for the super long wheelbase, the boot space is around 9,800 liters, so it's pretty massive. The load length around 3.4 meters, width around 1.7 meters, height around 1.6 meters. So it can obviously store a lot more. The major downside, of course, is it makes the car even bigger, which is going to be even more unwieldy to drive around and park if that's a concern for you. In either case though, you get a lot of storage space for the money, and you effectively get a gigantic rectangle in the back of the van that you can fit pretty much anything you want to fit into it. Alright, so what are my overall impressions of this Toyota van? Well, this has been a tricky one for me to review. Because I, on the one hand, am used to really uncomfortable cars, but on the other hand, I don't drive vans very often. So my overall thoughts are, it's kind of cheap, but it probably won't break. Everything inside it feels like it was done as cheap as possible. The infotainment isn't wonderful, the technology isn't wonderful, but it fits a lot of things. It doesn't cost terribly much compared to other vans, and it will probably work. And by virtue of this, if you're running a commercial outfit and you're looking to buy something that probably won't break and could do what you need, this will probably work. But if you personally need to spend any time in it, I'd probably look for some other cars, and I would probably look for some upgrades even if I didn't have them, i.e. replacing the terrible infotainment system with something that actually gives you decent resolution when trying to reverse, which this one patently does not have. So those are my overall thoughts about this van, my views on its pluses and its minuses, and those are my thoughts about whether it's worth considering if you're in the market for something that transports a lot of things. In any case, I hope the video has been vaguely useful to you. If it has been somewhat useful, it would be great if you click the like and subscribe buttons, but otherwise I very much hope to see you for future videos anyway. And in any case, thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.